I'm joined by Ryan Reynolds. Ryan is, let's see, an actor.
Yes.
Yeah. Ryan, this is a long time coming. I know you're a big TCM fan. Thank you for
TCM fan.
turning up for us. I appreciate it.
My God, this is an honor. I'm not normally nervous about doing interviews, but to show up on TCM, which is on, I make note, this is not an exaggeration, it is on in my home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because it's sort of my digital comfort blanket in a weird way. And it's kind of become that way for my kids. Some of the movies I'm sure are damaging them, but no worse than I am.
That's right.
So, yeah.
You programmed 2 films.
Yes, sir.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. First, John Hughes picture of 1987, Steve Martin, John Candy. And then after that, we'll have Grosse Pointe Blank. You're not merely a guest programmer. I want to make sure I get this right. You're also you're the guest curator at the TCM Julian's auction. That's going to be at Comic-Con at the end of July. And your character for your new film, Deadpool, was... You're contributing some of that material to the auction.
So happy to do it. Yeah. Also, I think it's an opportunity to really bridge, create a little bit of a bridge for, I do a lot of speaking events where I'm talking a bit about my career in the business side of things, and also my career in the showbiz side.
Are people interested in your career?
Sometimes, sometimes they're very good at better at acting than I am. So they seem quite attentive. But the one thing I think is really important is that people ask, how do you, approach some of this stuff? What's the best kind of method or mode for me to enter this business, show business? Young people really want to be a part of this, and I think for me, it's. I never took proper acting classes. I know some viewers right now are nodding in agreement. But I also, I spent my early days in improv, which I felt like taught me as much, if not more, than any acting class ever could have. And the other thing is TCM really did give me a sort of a scope and some encyclopedic library in my mind of not just narratives and performances, but also shots. And if I'm somebody who's 19 to 25, 26 right now, my advice would be turn TCM on and leave it on and just let it wash over you. Don't worry about sitting there and going, okay, what is this movie and how do I break it down and why is this good, why is this bad? Just let it wash over you.
Yeah, not whether this is realistic, right? Just take in the manner in which stories were told.
Because you guys show bad movies sometimes. Like get to see, also you see great actors in terrible movies sometimes. And you see terrible actors in a great movie. It's
elevating it a little.
It's wild.
So we're going to start with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Please,
from Paramount in '87. What drew you to this movie then, and what draws you to it now?
I've always been a bit of an obsessive over John Candy, and certainly Steve Martin as well.
You're from another land.
Yes, from the
Canada.
Canada,
yeah, which is, I think, north of us.
It is north of us.
And John Candy, I imagine, for Canadian actors of your generation and generations to follow, is fairly revered.
Yes, what Candy does in Planes, Trains is that he gives us this glimpse into his vulnerability and his humanity that you don't see in as many other films of his, and how these kind of maladaptive coping mechanisms that we use to sort of avoid life's harsher truths or emotional pain that we're going through, how those kind of act as a sort of a balm and help us get from one place to another. And his maladaptive coping mechanism in that movie is that he's like this incredibly clingy, in Steve Martin's eyes at least, the Neil Page character, annoying ass clown who just keeps showing up everywhere he goes. You kind of get to see why he does that, and I find it incredibly moving and heartbreaking. I try to put something from Planes, Trains in almost everything I do. I mean, if you see Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, certainly Deadpool and Wolverine, which is now coming out, there's a nod to John Candy and or Planes, Trains in every single one of those movies. Every time I license the book that Candy's holding that's called Canadian Mounted, where he's reading it in the airport, every time I have to call Paramount and give them $5,000, and I get to take the book and I get to put it on camera and bury it somewhere in Deadpool. But there's also a lot of the writing is inspired by that odd couple pairing, which I think is really beautiful.
Well, take a look at the movie. It's a road trip film with these two guys, and Steve Martin seems like the more important character, but I think the more times I see it, this movie's really about John Candy, and Steve Martin is us. Yeah. Steve Martin is the recognition of what's happening to Candy throughout the film.
He acts as the audience. Yes. So, and that's something that I steal from Steve Martin all the time, which is sit in the movie theater while you're making the movie. And I feel like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, as well as the other one I'm going to program in this movie, are movies that I suspect, now at 47 years old, that I could look back and know that those are movies that the filmmakers really listened to the movie. Because if you listen to your movie while you're making it, it will not only speak to you, it'll yell at you. And if you stick super close to just the script and the shot list, you can lose your footing really, really quickly. So these are movies that I think really had filmmakers that, and I say filmmakers in the plural because it's John Hughes, but I think Steve Martin as a premier storyteller, as do I feel the same way about John Candy. I feel like they were really listening to each other and the movie as it was being made and pivoting in beautiful ways. And the movie, I watch it probably 2 or 3 times a year, and it's one of my favorites of all time.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is a movie you say you watch at least a couple times a year.
Yeah.
That it is noteworthy that John Hughes chose as the last shot of that film is just Candy. And his face is saying, I'm very happy to be here, and I love that you and your wife love each other, and God, I miss my wife.
It doesn't feel like a moment of envy. He's happy for Steve Martin in that moment, to have that thing that he's lost.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if the words Edie McClurg didn't come up in some discussion of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Come on. So one of the all-timers.
That's right. I mean, she's in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, so memorably for John Hughes.
Yep.
She's the principal secretary. But here she's the rental car agent after there's no V5, there's no car there.
Yes,
right?
one of the great speeches.
Right.
But also, Edie McClurg's testament to, how powerful you can be listening in a scene. And listening to Steve Martin just go on this profanity-laced tirade for her. I always think about that moment too as one of my favorite scenes, probably my favorite scene is in the motel room between Steve and John Candy, but one of my favorite scenes is that one because you think, wow, you guys burned the R rating.
Yeah, for
this scene.
And how long that scene is? It's 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's less than 2 minutes. It's
but in this era, there is almost no studio on earth that would say, no, we're not going rated R, so you can have this one fucking scene
with
a fucking car, with this fucking woman.
He says it 18 times, and then she has the capper.
May I see your rental agreement?
I threw it away.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy, what?
You're fucked.
I mean, just one of the all-time, talk about, a nerve-wracking too. Imagine that day going into work and you're thinking oh my God, I just have to hit this one note perfectly. And boy, does she ever.
And her stuff at the beginning, ad lib. Just start talking. So she just started talking about Thanksgiving. It's so funny. It sets it up perfectly.
So much of when I was writing on Deadpool and Wolverine, so much of Planes, Trains is Planes, Trains influences so much of that writing. And in particular, there's a scene with Steve Martin and John Candy in the motel after Candy hands over his Casio watch to get a room for the night. And there's a moment where obviously where Steve Martin goes on a complete, absolutely gives John Candy a full strip down and just rips him in this sequence. And it is harsh. It is funny as hell. So it's a real tightrope walk, but it's also harsh. And there's a moment that I find very inspiring, which is that you can see this ever so slight flick of regret that clicks across Steve's eyes, because Steve is a beautiful actor.
As he's doing it, yeah.
Yeah, you see John Candy, all of that humanity and that pain, what he's really actually going through in that moment, that loneliness that just can't really be filled by anything other than someone like Neil Page. I find it incredibly inspiring, and there's a moment in Deadpool and Wolverine that is so slightly, I think people will catch is very reminiscent of that, and a moment that I think is, if I'm the John Candy character in Deadpool and Wolverine, Hugh would be the Steve Martin character.
And Hugh is...
huge asshole, yes. Sorry, where were you going with that? You were going somewhere else.
Hugh Jackman. He's
Hugh Jackman. Yes.
He's another
Hugh Jackman, Hugh Laurie, Hugh Grant. They're all in it. We got the Hughes to get to the movie's huge.
You mind putting your mask back on? Super hard to eat while I'm wearing it. It's super hard to eat when you're not.
Yeah, Hugh is phenomenal. Just obviously a Swiss Army knife type of actor who can do so many things. One of which I love seeing is when Hugh is vulnerable. Yeah.
No, so it's you and Hugh Jackman in Deadpool and Wolverine coming soon. But if you enjoy laughing and storytelling, then Deadpool. Both the Deadpool movies are worth seeing. I couldn't have enjoyed them more.
I'm immensely proud of them, and thank you.
Well, you should be. So the second film you picked Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which we just saw, but now coming up a decade later from 1997, this is John Cusack, Minnie Driver, Dan Aykroyd, and Joan Cusack in Grosse Pointe Blank. First of all, I'm glad you picked this because, I saw it and loved it when it came out, and I was suddenly, as I was watching it again, I'm like, I'm not sure I've seen this in 20, 25 years.
It's a fairly overlooked gem. Grosse Pointe Blank in particular does something that is very difficult in film to do, which is it really blends a number of different genres into one film. I mean, it's action, it's comedy, it's romance, it's drama, and they just did it, I thought, beautifully. And one of the great things that I think Cusack shows us in that film is how those stories we tell ourselves to make sure that we are the hero in our own narrative are illusions that sort of break down as we superimpose them over our actual life and the things that actually matter and the things that we're running from. And the movie does a great job of kind of taking what started as maybe high school ennui and freaking out. What this character kind of freaks out and runs away from everything. And then when he comes back, he's really forced to kind of confront it and let that illusion sort of dissolve. And I think it's beautifully done.
Yeah, a hitman going back for his 10th year of high school reunion. I mean, that's the beginning. Right.
If I'm a studio executive, I'm like, done. When do we start?
I'm already interested.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so the violence around the hitman part of it, it's not that important. It's all just as a means to tell his story and put that character under stress.
Classic movie maneuver. I mean, that part of it is just the sort of gateway drug into the movie.
Yeah.
And then lots of drug references coming up every once in a while, just letting you know. But yeah, they just do that so beautifully. And then also, speaking of drugs, nostalgia. Probably one of the greatest lab-grade narcotics on earth. Nostalgia is a beautiful thing, and I think high school reunions and
nostalgia is this incredibly powerful emotion that connects you to your own history and your family's history.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Even some of our worst memories can sometimes be, some of that trauma and difficulty can be paved over with nostalgia. And Grosse Pointe Blank does that so beautiful. It's also one of the finest Dan Aykroyd performances you will ever see. He is so weird and eccentric.
Easy there, Chief.
I love it. I can't get enough of it. And just how cool Minnie Driver is in this movie.
I mean, she's by far and away the most normal person in the movie, if you're looking for that.
Yeah.
But she's super interesting.
Yeah, and as soon as you see those two together and the chemistry that they have, you immediately buy in. You go, oh, I see why he has been haunted by this woman and has never been able to kind of reconcile his issues. And of course, Alan Arkin.
Don't kill anybody for a few days. See what it feels like.
I'll give it a shot.
No, don't give it a shot. Don't shoot anything.
The late, great Alan Arkin in one of the best, most interesting, funny performances you will ever see is Martin Blank's reluctant therapist.
Reluctant, terrified.
I mean,
therapist.
Terrified. Yeah. And Martin would then, is basically holding this guy hostage for therapy, and Alan Arkin's character keeps saying, I don't want to be a part of it. And then he would Martin Blank says something vaguely threatening, and Arkin is like, that wasn't designed to make me feel good, Martin. Look, Marty, the way he sort of speaks, and I'm doing my bad impression, but I love Alan Arkin.
Keep it up. Don't kill anybody.
Right.
Grosse Pointe Blank, in many ways, doesn't get credit for influencing movies that have touched on some of those themes later.
Hitmen at a crisis point in their life is an incredibly compelling story.
Of course. Grosse Pointe Blank really kind of found that sweet spot, I think, and it's another movie that informs me in a lot of things that I do, and I love it.
So, Grosse Pointe Blank movie, you must have seen. You were no longer a teenager, but you were a young man in your early 20s.
Yeah. I was just kind of, coming into my. I guess probably the weirdest part, and I realize these are all uptown problems of working in show business in your kind of late adolescent, early adulthood. Is that you have no clue who you are. You just kind of, the greatest superpower I ever gained was just finally knowing and having some insight into who I am,
By the way, I'm not an actor, but that's exactly true for me too. I couldn't, when I was a news anchor, I used to think, I'm playing a news anchor. I'm going through the machinations of what I think a news anchor would say, and it feels inauthentic.
And I felt similarly at that age, and a lot of movies that I would do, or a lot of performances that I would give into varying degrees of quality for certain, were, I would try out personas. I wanted to be John Cusack that day. I mean, I was
going to say, you can see, you watch Grosse Pointe Blank, and it's like I could see it through. And in a sense, it doesn't surprise me after seeing it. I'm like, yeah, of course, Ryan Reynolds.
I just found he was so seamless and kind of. I didn't feel the dialogue or the writing. It just kind of felt like a bunch of friends who made a movie together. And we talked about this.
In large part, it was. He and his two friends who then he worked on this. It was Tom Jankiewicz's screenplay, but then they worked on it a little bit just to make it fit with
Steve Pink. I mean, I think all those guys
that's right.
were buddies at the time. And the way it kind of sprung out of the screen to me was something that I found endlessly inspiring. And I still, to this day, I watch that one 2 or 3 times a year, just because the overlaps and the pop, the way the sort of dialogue kind of crackles in the movie, I find it absolutely fascinating. And I see something different every time as well.
Cusack has this great ability in this film to be funny, to be charming in this authentic way in moments of great stress, right? Which is what we get out of Deadpool, and that's...
it's a guy who's like, I think they're both, sort of feeding off each other. I mean, I one of the things, at least in the pieces of the movies that I write, I'm sort of finding that guy who's in a highly militarized shame spiral, which is kind of what Martin Blanc is in to a certain degree. He's paving over all of this pain with the wrong thing. And Deadpool certainly does it. Now, Deadpool being a little bit different because obviously his brain is a half-eaten ham sandwich. But John Cusack's character in this is just so quick and really really expresses a beautiful love story. And both of the movies I've been lucky enough to program tonight are really, I chose them because they're in a certain sense two-handers. John Cusack, Minnie Driver, John Candy, Steve Martin. But they're both love stories, and I find that all the movies that really work for me in life, and that doesn't mean movies without love are bad movies, but the ones that really work for me are at their core about love. The movie I have coming up, Hugh Jackman and I have been friends for 17 years, and I mean best buddies. And I adore and love this man, and I like that it's a love story between these two guys. And that one, Cusack and Minnie Driver, now that's a romantic love story, but boy, did they sell that. I mean, they're just gorgeous together.
Ryan, this was awesome.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Open invitation to come back on TCM anytime.
Don't tempt me. I will.
Not only was Ryan Reynolds a guest programmer tonight, he's also the first guest curator at the new TCM Julien's auction. So thank you for that as well.